what's up, everyone? You're watching The Grudge Match. This is Dave and Colin, and today we're pitting Resident Evil against Dead Space. And I'm Dave, and I'm for Resident Evil. I think I'm just going to kick things off, if you don't mind, Colin.
No, not at all.
Alright, so the reason I'm siding with Resident Evil is because I'm kind of talking about survival horror at its roots. And if survival horror is taken to its roots, it's taken right back to Resident Evil. You know, like, stick Resident Evil 5 aside for a second, put it in a little box or whatever. Resident Evil is the quintessential survival horror game, and I believe that it was at its pinnacle with 4, and I believe it can hit that pinnacle again and even go further. And I think if you're going to talk about survival horror, you just can't talk about it without bringing up this series.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all on that point. I think RE4 is the best Resident Evil game, but RE4 didn't go full circle with what they were trying to do. They changed things. Some were bad, some were good, but it was a deviation from the series that RE5 has taken completely out of control. RE5 is not a survival horror game anymore. And I would also say that, you know, Resident Evil was inspired by Sweet Home and Alone in the Dark and stuff, but I don't see that RE5 would inspire any future survival horror games because it's not a survival horror game.
Okay. Well, I sort of see Dead Space as more of like the derivative of Resident Evil, like it sort of is an offshoot almost. Like I would take it as a Dead Aim or something. Just like something cool off on the side that's good in its own right, but I don't think it has that core approachability that Resident Evil does with the zombies, the haunted house, like everything that you see in survival horror or in a horror movie is sort of like associated with Resident Evil.
Yeah, I think. I think that one of the things that takes away from the survival horror of RE5 in particular is that there's no claustrophobic feeling anymore. It's not, not to say RE4 had a lot of wide open environments and things of this nature, but it was still dark, it was still dreary, and most importantly, Clayman, you were by yourself, not with a partner. That didn't work.
That is true. Being with somebody else makes things a lot less scary. So I think I wanted to talk about the Resident Evil series just in terms of its characters. And I mean, I talked about the haunted house, and you just said the setting being open kind of like ruins the horror experience. But the fact that Resident Evil has this cast of characters that you can sort of identify with over the years that have always been there, sort of been like these people you go back to time after time, and like everybody sort of knows who they are, I think is what makes it such an important landmark in survival horror, because not only is it horror with people constantly dying, you constantly dying, but somehow you can relate to these characters. I didn't see that in Dead Space. Isaac, decent idea, but he's just, he's you, sort of, because you can't see his face. So I didn't really feel like I related to the characters at all. They seemed like sort of stereotypical space horror characters.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I like Chris, just like I liked Leon. I think we have gotten to know these characters over the years. I did like Isaac Clarke's approach, though, in that he's not a soldier. He's not really trained to fight. He's an engineer. He's caught in a really scary situation for himself that he didn't expect. He was just going to the ship to fix it. He had no idea what he was going to find, and now he's by himself using his engineering tools to fight instead of guns, and I think that's a pretty cool approach.
Well, okay, so let's go to the future of what's going to happen with these. We know there's going to be another Dead Space. I mean, we pretty much know it, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and we know that there's going to be about 1 million more Resident Evils because, let me just bust out the new data we got in today. NPD shows that it pretty much sold somewhere around 1 billion more copies than Dead Space.
Yes, it did.
So I think for the future of the franchise, I don't disagree with your dislike of Resident Evil 5, but I would have to say that they're probably going to change it up again for the next one. I wouldn't say that it's going to go in any certain direction. Like, I wouldn't expect it to be Gears of War next time, as it seems to be headed towards, but I would say that it might be even a little bit more like Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think there's some indications that RE6 will be more like RE4, maybe even games before it. I just, I think RE5's not a bad game. It did a lot of things right. In fact, it did a lot of things that Dead Space did right, too, like the chapter approach, very formulaic approach as far as being able to sit down for an hour or two and play, and then you're comfortable getting up and approaching it the next day. But I'm excited about Dead Space's sequel because I think there's a lot of story left to be told. We don't know what happened to Isaac. We don't know what the story is with the Necromorphs, really, and the conspiracy with religion, and maybe we'll meet some new characters, and we'll learn more about the conspiracy surrounding Dead Space. I think it'll be more of a continuous story as opposed to RE5's kind of piecemeal approach to storytelling when it really had nothing to do with, for instance, with RE4 and Leon's story.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I guess for now we'll just say that I won and you are dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fair enough.